Yes, sir, we can, hear you now. The equipment is back up and running. Thank you for your patience. You can open the meeting whenever you'd like.
Okay, let's open the meeting. Board Secretary statement.
Yes, sir. Good morning, board, staff, and members of the public. After my statement, the chairman will open this meeting and explain the rules for this electronic meeting. Please keep your microphone on mute when you are not speaking. The technical support team may proactively mute participants if the microphone is picking up background noise. Board members should check to make sure the microphone is not muted before speaking. You may text me at 540-336-3948 at any time during the meeting if you need technical support, and an IT tech will call yourself on to assist. I now turn the meeting over to Chairman Sullivan.
Thank you. The Loudon Water Board is meeting today by electronic means pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3708.2. Public notice and meeting access information was provided on the Loudon Water website. A recording of the meeting is available from the board secretary. Future meetings will be in person unless indicated otherwise in the public notice. Board members wishing to speak are reminded to press unmute and identify themselves by name so that staff can accurately capture comments. The board secretary will now take a roll call attendance of the members.
Okay, do it again.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Bonfils?
Present. Excuse me, present.
Thank you, I hear you, sir. Mr. Moody?
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Thurscar? Ms. Thurscar just texted that she's having issues and AJ is gonna give her a call, so she'll be joining. Mr. Sultan?
Here,
Thank you.
we don't have the agenda up on the screen. There we go. I don't see it up on the screen, but I think the first item is to have a roll call of the members.
Good morning. This is Angeline. I'm calling in from California this morning.
Everything's already open.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you. I
Yes.
will note that you are president later, Ms. Thurscar.
Oh.
Excuse me a second, Jewel. I think we're having trouble hearing you because there's background noise there, kind of hearing the whispering. So if we could get you maybe just a little clearer, that would be good.
Thank you for
And
letting us know.
sure. And I
Yes.
think Mr. Sultan, we need approval of the agenda.
Okay, because the agenda is not on the screen.
Right. Right.
I see the agenda.
Oh, I don't see it on my screen for some reason.
The agenda is up, but, so approval of the minutes is the next item, sir, if you want to call for approval of that. Then I'll take a roll call vote.
Approval for what did you say?
The minutes from the last meeting.
Okay, let's have a roll call on approval of those minutes.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Keith, for approving the agenda. I apologize.
Yeah, we'll do the agenda first, and I second Mr. Moody's. Is Jim. Approval of the agenda.
Can we have approval of, have a roll call vote?
Yes, sir, Mr. Bonfils,
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Ms. Thurscar,
Yes.
and Mr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Thank you. And the next item is action, the approval of the construction contract for the Lansdowne pump station upgrades by Matt Osheki. Please station. Please review.
Don't,
Matt, I think
you're on mute.
I don't think he is. It's not working.
Yeah,
No, you can't
we
hear
can't hear
him.
you, Matt.
I think Matt is also having problems with his setup. Hold on just one moment. I'm so sorry. That's the problem. That was his. She went out. She was. Is he in the office? Okay, as soon as.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, that works, Matt.
Yes,
Thank
Alright.
you.
Sorry about that. Not sure what's going on. All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Osheki. I'm here seeking approval of the construction contract to Ace Construction for the Lansdowne Sewer Pump Station reliability upgrades. All right. So to give you a little background, this pump station was commissioned in 2004, so quite a while ago. It was also a developer built station. And also to highlight this was only Loudon Water's second only sewer pump station. So a little more on that point in the next slide here. So project drivers, really the genesis of this project was replacement of components that were nearing the end of their useful life. When looking to replace those components, we also realized that some of those were obsolete and no longer manufactured, which required a kind of a more in-depth look at the station. So with components that are nearing the end of their useful life comes high maintenance costs. So that was also a large driver here for doing some upgrades. Operation of the station was also a big driver. Often these old developer built stations use super conservative figures and typically don't operate properly under real world conditions. So as I previously mentioned, this was one of our first stations. It lacks some of the kind of modern features that we have on other stations in our system, like variable frequency drives on pumps, some of the control components that we have on other stations. Lastly, the station was built prior to the Dulles watershed area policy, which requires emergency storage tanks. So this station does not have an emergency storage tank. And in an effort to reduce a potential sanitary sewer overflow, we are including a permanent bypass pump that would kind of act as a failover should the main pumps fail. Scope of work, as I mentioned, we're replacing pumps. We're adding that bypass pumping assembly. We're upgrading control systems. We're also upgrading electrical HVAC, site improvements. Really, the takeaway here is that we're really touching every aspect of this pump station, this project. We received great bid results on our advertisement. We got 4 bids, the lowest being Ace Construction. And as you can see below, I think we really nailed the engineer's estimate, almost to the dollar here. So you couldn't ask for a better estimate.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Marty.
Did you say, are you adding an overflow tank or that's not part of it?
So there's no room to add an emergency storage tank, but we are adding a permanent bypass pumping assembly, which can pump upstream of the wet well back into the force main. So that just adds some more resiliency to that station.
Okay, I was just curious. Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Yes. Hi, this is Keith. I also have a question. You mentioned the maintenance costs or high maintenance costs. Matt, are the maintenance costs, have they been going up over the past few years? And can you give me a sense as to what the maintenance costs are, or the annual maintenance costs? Just trying to understand.
Sorry, I don't have figures in front of me. I'm sure that's something we could get over to you, but it is known that maintenance costs have been high relative to other stations. And that's in part due to the aging components, but also, as I mentioned, the kind of operation of the station isn't ideal due to the kind of conservative flow assumptions that were made during design of the station.
Do you have a sense whether those costs have been trending upwards, or is it pretty much just been high relative to the other pump stations?
I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you, but I'm sure we could pull some figures together for you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, definitely just curious just to see, kind of get a sense.
Sure. All right, so as you see here, the project schedule design brought us through April of this year. We placed this out for bid, which brought us to June. And as you can see, construction will bring us through Q1 of 2025. Just our CIP project snapshot here. This is waste 35.
I have another question.
Sure, go ahead, Marty.
Who did that estimate?
That estimate was completed by CDM Smith.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Just want to highlight here, our 10-year CIP budget for this project is 5.27 million. Our collective construction and CA services task order will remain under that 5.27 million. So just wanted to highlight that for the committee here. All right, and before I move on to the motion, I just want to pause for any additional questions. All right. Here's the recommended motion.
Okay, I'll move the motion. I'll read it. I move the board approve award of the construction contract for Lansdowne Sewer Pumping Station reliability upgrades to American Contracting and Environmental Services, Inc. for $3,200,000 with an approximate 5% contingency to be controlled by the general manager for a total authorized budget of $3,360,000. Additional costs will require board approval. Can we have a roll call on this?
On the motion, please.
I'll second it and I'll vote yes. This is Jim.
Thank you. So Mr. Bonfils votes yes. Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Sarah?
Yes.
And Mr. Sullivan?
Yes, and I should have mentioned put it on consent. Unless somebody has an objection.
I'd prefer not to put it on consent at 3.3 million.
Okay, what about Jim and Angela?
I would like to put it on consent.
Yeah, this is Keith. Yeah, I'm fine with putting on a consent as well.
And I would like to put it on consent. So since they're more on consent, let's put this on consent.
Thank you. The motion moves forward on the consent agenda for the board meeting. The next item is the approval of the construction administration services contract, Lansdowne Pump Station upgrades by Doug Watkins.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And before Doug begins, just for benefit of the committee, since Doug is a new face here today in front of the committee, I just wanted to say a few words to introduce him. Doug's been with Loudon Water almost 2 years now and came to us from Ullman Schutte Construction, where he spent about 6 years working on water and wastewater projects here in Northern Virginia. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Doug.
Thank you, Alton. Good morning, everyone. I'm here to seek approval of the task order for construction administration services for the Lansdowne Sewer Pump Station reliability upgrade project that Matt just presented on for HDR Incorporated. Our goals for construction administration services are to support the Loudon Water Project Manager, to ensure quality and contract compliance, to leverage the consultant's expertise. HBRDR designed the project, and thus they're intimately familiar with all the work that needs to happen here. And to reduce owner liability to risk of exposure to delays, claims, and potential poor contractor performance. Our scope for CA services task order. This is our pretty standard construction phase services menu for projects similar to this. Notably, the full times inspection will not be covered by HDR. It will be covered by Loudon Water Inspections. And payment application review is typically the responsibility of the Loudon Water Project Manager. CA services will be covering 15 plus different disciplines throughout this project. Key scope drivers for the project. Maintenance of the sewer pump station operation during a comprehensive overhaul will be critical. The contractor is going to be touching just about every part of this pump station, and throughout that, we don't want to shut the pump station down for any more than an hour here and there for tie-ins and things like that. As Matt got into, the original pump station was developer built in 2004, one of the oldest in our system. We have scheduled a long-term 100+ day diesel bi-pump bypass of the plant. This is for the contractor to get into the wet well and other areas that usually receive flow to do all their work. Potential small site conflict resolution. The Lansdowne pump station sits on a very small footprint. It's very densely populated with both above ground and below ground utilities. The contractor is likely going to have several subs, many different trades in there working at the same time. This is likely to generate RFIs. We're happy to have HDR on board to leverage their expertise in dealing with those RFIs and getting them resolved before any claims arise. Integration of new and existing facilities, as Matt got into, the pumps that are currently in operation are no longer manufactured. We'll be swapping those out using some of the existing facilities throughout the project. Regulatory assistance, HDR will be helping us with any and all permitting needs on the project, and supply chain challenges to facilitate evaluation of substitutes or alternatives. If it turns out things in our engineering design manual and our specifications are not available, HDR will help us evaluate alternatives for those products. I'd be happy to pause here for any questions anyone may have. All right, getting into scope and level of effort. The total proposed cost for the CA services contract is $275,000. Notably, a large percentage of that is for submittal and resubmittal review. Because of this, we did a deep dive into that to really understand those numbers. We did a takeoff of all the submittals required, made a submittal list from the ground up, looking at the specifications, counting every single spec that required a submittal. We came out to about 230 total submittals. From there, we worked with HDR to assume some bundling the contractor might use for the submittals, to look at which HDR engineer would be reviewing each submittal, and assume some Loudon Water self-review. We got that submittal number down from 230 to 160. The total construction administration phase service for this minor facility upgrade is 8.6% of construction cost. That comes in well below our historical CA services cost metric, which is typically between 10 and 16%. I'd be happy to pause here as well for any questions. Okay, this is the same slide Matt shared with us, just to highlight that our 10-year CIP budget is $5.27 million with the $3.2 million for construction and the $275,000 for CA services. We are well below that number.
Okay, can I jump in for a minute?
Yes, sir, Mr. Sultan.
Well, finish it off and then I'll go with what I was going to talk about.
Yes, sir. Here's the project schedule. I just wanted to highlight that HDR will be helping us performing the CA services throughout the duration of the construction phase of the project. And then I have the motion here before you and be happy to take your question, Mr. Sultan.
This is more of a review. First of all, I'm in favor of a consent on this, but I got contacted by Mark Kobus, who doesn't want to vote. I don't know if he's going to be at the board meeting, but he has indicated that he wants this on action. I disagree with him, but I did promise him I would mention his objection. And what he didn't like is he didn't like the $132,000 for the submittals. But in my opinion, you guys have adequately reviewed that. He also didn't like the fact that the total construction and design is something at 19%. And he didn't like that. And that's another reason why he would vote against moving ahead with it, or at least moving ahead with it on consent. My thinking is that whatever happened in design is long gone. You do not want to shortchange the construction end because, in my experience, your biggest liability, money-wise, is not having adequate construction supervision. So, because of that, I took the construction support separate from whatever happened in design. That's long past. At any rate, I said that I would mention Mark's objection to this. And like I say, I'm in favor of consent. But now I'll leave it open to any questions from the other members.
Yeah, Marty, if you could better explain the 133K in submittals, we can go back with that. I must have missed that.
The 132K he thinks is too much for submittals. And as you heard in the presentation, staff went in minute detail to go in each section of the specs and figure out what package we're going to expect. And they worked it out so that 132,000 is reasonable according to staff. And I think that the size of the submittals, I believe, is in the historical context. So that's what the issue was with the 132,000.
Okay. So when you say historical context, Marty, you're saying it's in range of what's been in the past for a project of similar nature.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Moody. If we look at that $132,000 as a comparison to the total construction cost, the construction bid, it comes in at about 4.1%. And that's really, we've basically put together some additional metrics that looked at across multiple similar projects to this one. And that 4.1% number is really right in the middle of the pack. And, using that as a baseline, we feel, that among many other metrics that we looked at to baseline, this proposed fee, we felt good about that. And just to elaborate again on what Doug had mentioned earlier, the submittal and the resubmittal reviews, it really is one of the areas where we can really derive a bottom-up fee, because again, we are able to go through the entire set of specifications and develop a list of every single submittal that's called for. And that was the number that Doug spoke of, the 230 submittals. And then from there, we're able to make assumptions on hours per submittal. But as Doug pointed out, we didn't take it as just 230 submittals times X hours. we worked collaboratively with HDR based on what we know typically happens during construction is the contractor doesn't submit 230 packages. A number of the submittals will get bundled together as one package. So that's what Doug was stating, that we actually reduced that assumption from 230 to, I believe it was about 160, if I'm not mistaken. And that was really the basis that we then multiplied by an assumed number of hours per submittal. And, from there, we came up with this budget. And from there, we're actually also able to see what transpires during execution of this contract and the billings, and what actually is done is what's billed. So let me pause there to see if that helps.
Yes, thank you very much, Alton. Yeah, because looking at this, when you look at the 48.2%, it seems, high relative, just for this administrative phase. But when you mention the 4.1% of the overall construction cost, then it seems relatively normal and not a huge astronomical number. So thank you for explaining that.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Alton explained that a hell of a lot better than I did, but that's, I did commit to Mark that I would mention his objection, even if I disagreed. And I also told Mark that I would submit it to a committee vote. Let me move the motion, and then we could talk about whether to go to consent or action. Are there any other questions? Okay, I move the board approve a task order for construction administration services for the Lansdowne sewage pumping station reliability upgrades to HDR for $275,000 with an approximate 5% contingency to be controlled by the general manager for a total authorized budget of $290,000. Additional costs will require board approval. I'm recommending that we go consent, but I'd like to hear what the other members have to say. Keith?
Yes, with the explanation, I'm agreeing with consent.
Jim?
I'll second your motion, and I'll agree with consent.
Angeline?
Agree with consent.
And I want consent. Okay, that's unanimous. I guess we have to get a motion, a vote on the motion.
Yes, Mr. Bonfils,
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Ms. Sursakar,
Yes.
and Mr. Sultan.
Yes.
Thank you. This will move forward on the consent agenda for the board meeting. The next item is the Broad Run Water Reclamation Facility Phase 3 by Kendra Svium.
By the way, Jewel, thanks for doing it. I don't have the agenda on my screen, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, there it is. Oops.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just requesting control of the presentation here. All right, so this is an informational item, and it is a update on where we are on the overall Broad Run Phase 3 expansion program, which we talked a lot about last year. So our agenda today to kick us off is we're going to review the program goals and the program drivers, just to refresh on why we're needing this additional expansion of Broad Run. And then we're here today to give an update on our progress on spending and schedule for where we are. So the Phase 3 expansion of Broad Run had 3 overarching goals. The main goal was to increase treatment capacity, which we will talk more about in this presentation on what our capacity needs are. But in addition, wastewater treatment in general, but definitely Broad Run, there is a lot of movement on our regulations right now. And as always, Broad Run has special requirements. So we really need to get to a point of achieving even additional cutting edge levels of operation. And our goal with this expansion is to try to get ahead of wastewater flows while, we're still completing our phase 2 expansion while working on this. So we're hoping to get an increment that allows us to build and really work on optimizing what we have. This is definitely a challenge, a program of this size, because we've got to balance the complexity of what we're building. These objectives at times can start overlapping with each other, and there's always uncertainty about where we'll go in the future with this long schedule of this project. So starting with just a refresher on Loudon Water overall and what we have in terms of water treatment capacity and wastewater treatment capacity. So Loudon Water has invested very heavily in the Potomac Water Supply Program. And so when we look at what we built with Trap Rock and our Potomac water intake, in addition to the water that we can purchase from Fairfax Water, we have 70 MGD of water treatment capacity. And this is positioning us very well for our needs to supply drinking water, both now and in the future. And we really need to continue to invest in those processes as well as we look at developing our redundancy and reliability. In comparison, on the wastewater side, currently, right now, we have 23.8 MGD of wastewater treatment capacity. If we take what we can treat from at Broad Run and the capacity that we have to send down the Potomac Interceptor to DC Water. This is what we're working on expanding under the phase 2 expansion. That expansion will take Broad Run to 15 MGD, taking our overall treatment capacity to 28.8. So we're getting close to 30. Now, there is not a driver to say that our wastewater treatment capacity should exactly match our water capacity, because some water goes to irrigation, some water is evaporated for data center cooling, but in general, we produce about 2/3 of the wastewater compared to the drinking water that we supply. So when we looked at the expansion for phase 3, we selected an increment of another 15 MGD to get Broad Run to 30. And when we look at this as an overall number, this is positioning us very well in terms of making sure that we have the wastewater treatment capacity to treat the water that we can possibly supply. So it really is bringing our wastewater treatment in line to what we have invested in terms of water supply. And when we were discussing this last year, the question was raised, is this really sufficient compared to our 70, or does this number, would this number need to get higher? The more we've looked at that in terms of our numbers, we feel these two capacities are going very well. Just with the amount of wastewater that we can store at a given time and what our historic water treatment and water supply projections look at, this is a good level to get our wastewater treatment capacity to. In addition to looking internally at what we have in terms of available capacities, we also looked externally and said, what do other wastewater treatment systems in our area have in terms of installed treatment capacity compared to the flows they're actually treating? So we've lined these graphs up, and in blue is the wastewater demand, so the flows coming in to the treatment plant. In green is the available treatment capacity of those plants. So we've got Broad Run at the end of phase 2, we will have about 20% available treatment capacity from flows coming in and what we might be able to treat if flows went up. With our 30 MGD capacity, so another 15 MGD increment, that would get us to 34% available capacity. So we said, well, what available capacity are other treatment plants carrying in terms of how much more treatment capacity have they constructed and invested in with these large capital programs compared to flows coming into the plant. And what this really quickly showed us is even, really right now with phase 2, we are one of the lowest in the Northern Virginia region in terms of available treatment capacity we could have. And there are always uncertainties with wastewater flows. And so that means it is a good investment that we continue building so that we get more available capacity, so that we have what I like to refer to as the buffer, so that if growth is higher than we anticipate, or if we have extremely wet years, we've got the available capacity installed to treat if flows are unexpectedly higher. And really, even at 34%, we are still among the lowest of other utilities. So we can safely say that a 30 MGD increment is not over investing in our infrastructure. It's really putting us closer to where we need to be so that we can continue to respond to unexpected changes, in development or in the service area or in weather patterns. It's a responsible decision to make to continue to increase that capacity. Was there a question out there, or we can get into what the scope of the project is?
Yeah, I just had a question. Who is that? The 25% capacity NCP? Who is that?
Yeah, so that's the Noman Coal plant. So that is Fairfax County's plant. And Fairfax County is also facing some pretty intense growth pressures as well, right, with the development that they've got going around the Metro Rail. And so Fairfax County, Alex Renew, UOSA, they're all looking at plant expansions as well, because of growth and increasing demands.
Okay, thanks.
So this is a graphical representation of where we are in the overall planning to get us to 30 MGD. So what you see in white are all our existing structures, and the blue are new infrastructure that we're going to be building. And the major takeaway of this is, this is large scale infrastructure. We're really going to be doubling the amount of buildings on site. So this is a lot of work to be done. You'll also notice that there are black boxes that have some lines dashed through them. We still have to plan for additional regulatory changes or additional expansion of Broad Run that might happen in 2040 or 2050. So we are always in an iterative design, construction, and planning for a future. So these are spots we're reserving for what might be needed to get to lower nutrient levels, what might be needed for additional PFAS treatment. So we always want to ensure what we're building now is compatible with a flexible future. So we've got those spaces reserved so that we can continue to adapt as we move forward. But the infrastructure that we are building is more of our biological treatment system, more membranes for filtration. We will need more chemical storage and delivery facilities. And then a big piece of what we're doing is our thermal drying facility for our biosolids. And this is, on the liquid side treatment, we're building more of the same because it is still the most advanced liquid treatment you can get. We are achieving some of the highest quality effluent in the nation, and there's not much more you can do to improve upon that. So, we did our planning phase and said, yes, this is still the most advanced, so we want to continue with that. But on the solids level, right now, we use anaerobic digestion and produce Class B biosolids. So we have selected investing in a thermal drying facility. So this is going to improve the quality of our biosolids. We're going to be able to get the biosolids drier. We're going to make a pelletized product. So for the farmers who are going to use this for land application, it becomes exactly the same to them as fertilizer. They can use the same equipment to spread it. It's a very desirable product for them. And it also greatly reduces the quantity of material that Loudon Water has to pay to haul. So there's a lot of the benefits. And this is a really big advancement in our solids processing that it made a lot of sense for us to invest.
Now with Lumen. How are you?
In that process.
Excuse me, somebody has somebody needs has their microphone on. Thank you.
Can I ask, the thermal drying comes in after the digestion?
So it's a really neat advancement that we get to make. We will only digest a portion of our sludge now, and that's the primary sludge because it has a lot of fresh carbon and produces a lot of biogas. The sludge coming from our biological reactors, we'll just be able to take it straight to the dryer because there's not a lot of value in digesting it. So it allowed us to really optimize the digestion process and digest what we needed to, because permit compliance is now achieved by the dryer. And by the permit compliance, that is the level of treatment we're achieving is by the high temperature that we are drying those solids at. So it was a very nice optimization of our existing digesters. They can continue to digest that primary sludge for us through 30 MGD, and then we will dry the rest.
Now the product that comes out of the dryer, are you saying that we would sell that?
That is to be determined on what the final process is for those pellets, but we have a market study ongoing right now to say, well, what are other utilities getting for their Class A biosolids? And so we do know that UOSA does sell their Class A solids that is produced from a dryer similar to this, but it's all up for evaluation. There may even be a source we could find that isn't land application. This can be used as fuel in a cement kiln or other things. So the market analysis is ongoing to determine the best use of this more advanced product.
Oh, interesting. Thank you.
All right, so we wanted to just send a reminder of the overall schedule for this. So this is one of the largest capital undertakings that Loudon Water will have gone through since the original construction of Broad Run, and it is going to take us a while to get through. So not only is it a lot to be built, but this is going to occur over the next 10 years. And as we started looking at the scale of what we needed to do here, we felt it was best to break it into 4 various construction packages to help us make progress and meet the timelines that we have to get some critical infrastructure online, in addition to trying to manage uncertainties. If we went with one large construction package that took us 10 years to build, there could be a lot of change while we were trying to build that. So releasing it as multiple packages has been a really key strategy to helping us manage this large program over the scope of time. So the overall budget that we have for the phase 3 expansion is $650 million. Now that is going to be broken up into the 4 contracts we have. So we won't need to decide, one total value all at once. It allows us to take bite-sized pieces of the project and evaluate as we go what appropriate spending is throughout. But this capital expense is absolutely necessary because continued expansion of our wastewater treatment capacity is critical for the future of Loudon Water. So when we look at that project budget, it breaks down to approximately $540 million in construction and $110 million in design and construction services. So along with this being a very large construction project, we will see some of the largest design and construction service fees that we've had come through. And similar to the discussions today about what is appropriate for a shop drawing review or the level of design, our project management team is very, very busy at this moment working on our strategies to manage those budgets. And as we bring each of these contracts forward, we believe the phasing of this is going to help us manage that so we don't have to approve, $100 million of services all at one time. We're going to be working with third-party estimates to make sure that we're getting independent reviews of numbers that we bring forward, and are continuing to monitor similar project metrics to help us make sure that we've got proper justification for the large scale that these contracts will come in at. The other thing that is definitely going to be a challenge with something of this size is cost estimating is still very up in the air just because of the volatility that we're seeing in raw materials still due to escalation and the changes in the economy. So we do believe that the strategies that we've got of really releasing these slowly over time and the multiple contracts is going to help us manage that as well. And we're working on a lot of cost estimating strategies so that we don't incorporate too much risk into the numbers we're bringing forward now, and continue to keep the costs in line with our projections. So this is a summary of where we are in spending with the task orders that have been approved by the board to date. So our first task order we brought forward was the planning contract to decide how much we needed to build and what we needed to be built. That contract is essentially complete and almost completely spent. There are some minor tasks continuing on that were more small level studies in that larger project that will be wrapped up in the next month. The bigger task order was design task 1, which we brought forward last year. And this included the basis of design report for the whole facility. We needed to make sure before we started spending anything, we knew exactly how big all of the different buildings needed to be. It also concluded complete design of the first construction package, which is just site preparation. And this is allowing us to work with the county on stormwater management and really get a contractor out to start moving a lot of earth and checking for how much rock is going to have to be removed early. Right now, this budget is 45% spent. That's because to date, we've completed that big basis of design report, and that was close to half of this design task budget. And that was completed on schedule and on budget and was really a key milestone to us staying on track to get this critical infrastructure online. Time complete is only 30% because that design for construction package 1, that's going to go on for another year. It was a smaller value and will continue to expend. So as we come back and report to you, what you'll see is spending will slow down as time starts increasing because we got the big task done. The other item included in this design task 1, we talked about at the water resources meeting. This also has our funds in it for our PFAS removal piloting that we've really just started. So that is planned to go on for a couple of years and will be another long-term task in here that's important to inform what we're designing, but also just contributes to the schedule being longer, but it is a smaller cost item in this task order. As we continue our updates on program spending, we will continue to bring additional design tasks that you've approved in construction services tasks so that we can keep up with all the contracts that will be issued on this and report back on spending in progress. So also equally critical is where we are on schedule. So it was late last year that we got your approval of this first design task 1, and the basis of design report was mission critical to get the design criteria for all of the facilities laid out. And we are so happy to report that that draft report has been submitted. We've gone through major review workshops. We've really got a good plan for how all the packages can move forward. So we will be preparing in the August-September timeframe to get started and come back to you with a contract for design package 2. And that's really the first design of facilities. And these are our critical facilities that are causing really the biggest time driver to move forward with this. And that is our thermal drying building and our biological processes. Those we will run out of treatment capacity there the earliest. So we do have a timeline to get those online to ensure we have sufficient treatment capacity. And so this is The general update that we had for the board on our progress is, are there any questions? All right, well, thank you very much for your time today, and
I have something to say. I think that the composition of this program is excellent. I like the fact that you guys are doing it piecemeal like that. That makes a lot of sense. And not only that, I think this presentation was absolutely excellent and even got me to understand what's going on, which is a job and a half. But so thank you.
thank you very much.
Yeah, and I just wanted to echo that. Thank you, Mr. Salt, and I appreciate the feedback. And I just wanted to mention that, you know, what was discussed earlier during the Lansdowne item and Mr. Koblis's concerns. I just wanted to reiterate, we are, you know, taking a very close look at these sorts of items, and as you pointed out, I think that shows through in sort of the composition of this program and levers we've set in place that we can pull on to make sure that we're able to keep these costs in check. So thank you very much.
All right, the
Again,
next item is
Yeah,
the
go ahead, Joel,
Milestone
'cause I don't
Reservoir
know.
and Pump Station by Sam Flores.
Morning, fellow colleagues and members of the committee. Today I have the fortunate task to present after Kendra. Raised tough act to follow, falls a little bit short, but the goal is to present an informational item, an informational update on the Milestone Reservoir Pump Station project. Sorry, I'm presenting from Savita's computer, not my usual setup here. The agenda's up on the screen, and the reason we thought this was a good time to provide this item is that we are really approaching a key turning point in the project as we get ready to advertise the project and open bids in July, which we'll talk a little bit more about later in the presentation. We've completed our 90% design deliverable, and with that, we are sort of getting ready to negotiate a contract price with Clark as we approach the construction phase of the project. So most of you will already be aware of a lot of this from previous presentations, but the Milestone Reservoir and Pump Station project is really the final key piece of the Potomac Water Supply Program, with the ultimate goal to improve the resiliency of our drinking water system. So looking ahead a little bit, and maybe a little bit on where we are at right now, everything towards the left side of the screen here in gray represents progress already made. We've largely been able to stay on schedule in spite of some challenges, which we'll talk about later in the meeting. Everything in black towards the right side of the screen represents upcoming major milestones for the project. Here we have an overview of the overall site layout, which has really seen a lot of refinement since the 60% design and towards the current 90% design here. So it shows the key elements of the project here, including the pump station itself, our access from Cochrane Mill Road, which is going to be that bridge across Sickle Creek, which is going to be our primary and really our sole access to the site for the future. The new transmission lines, maintenance building, some of the other key features there. And here we see a profile of the major geotechnical construction elements which will really connect the reservoir to the pump station site and allow for filling and withdrawal of the reservoir itself. And so we thought this would be a great opportunity to leverage some of the work we've done in developing a BIM model during the design process, and really provide a little tour of the facilities with a little bit more visual, better, more accurate visual representation of what's there now in the design. And so I'll try to play this video here. So first off, we have our reservoir, which is going to be providing just a little bit over 1 billion gallons of storage for future use and use during drought events and water quality challenges. Here we see our 3 portals, and if you look at the bottom one, you can sort of see a little peaking of the pipe that we'll use for filling of the reservoir. This profile shows our 3 tunnels, 10-foot diameter, horseshoe shaped, and our shaft, which is roughly a little bit over 200 feet in depth and 35 feet in diameter. As we approach it, we'll get a closer look at the profile showing our vertical submersible turbine pumps. Up here we see our we saw a preview there of the tunnel sort of in profile. This leads to our pump station, showing some of the architectural elements that we discussed and collaborated with our board to develop. Sort of a site overview, generator structure in front. This is, we think, a pretty accurate representation of what the site is going to look like when it's built out. You see the maintenance structure towards the background there. And just to the top of this, you'll see our bridge and our proximity to Goose Creek and our reservoir. Pause here for a moment. So we have another short clip showing some of the interior elements of the pump station itself. And we'll stop at a few points here to show our fill system. The sleeve valves that really control flow out of the reservoir and on the way to trap. Our compressed air system for bubbler level measurement. We have our hydraulic skid, which will help with our gates, stainless steel roller gates, which I forgot to mention during our little overview of the shaft. Our pump discharge here.
I have a question. What was the bubbler measure? What was that?
For level measurement of the quarry reservoir.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And our surge tank for transient mitigation. So we worked with Arcadis and the rest of the consulting team to really figure out what we could do to mitigate the impacts of transients or transient events based on an analysis of the current conditions and the expected conditions after design. And so that surge tank that you saw there towards the end is a necessary feature to mitigate vacuum and overpressure conditions on the system. We'll transition here to an update on the project schedule. And the takeaway at this for this slide is really that our permitting efforts have been proceeding since preliminary design, really, and when we've reached our 90% design estimate, we've been able to leverage the CMAR delivery method to really kick off the bidding process and contract price negotiations without having to wait until the full development of the 100% design. And the reason for that we will get to in this slide. And a lot of us by now have heard of our challenges with time of year restrictions associated with the upgrading of the certain species of bats from threatened to endangered and how that's impacted development in the area. But I'll say when the projects first kicked off, we really didn't see it coming. And so we were able to leverage the CMAR delivery method, which, as you know by now, we pivoted to at a certain point in the design effort to try to devise some strategies to stay ahead of the time of year restrictions that that'll impose in construction. And so the takeaway here is that 90% based bid and negotiation effort goes a long way towards ensuring that if we work to our plan, we are able to start the work in the fourth quarter of this year, get our clearing done by that April 1st date, and really avoid that clearing restriction imposed as a result of the time of year restrictions for the northern long-eared bats. We also had some in-stream work restrictions associated with other species of mussels on the creek. And so in order to work around that, we pre-procured or are in the process really of pre-procuring box culverts that will serve as means of temporary access across the creek after the site is cleared and before the permanent bridge construction is fully executed, so that we can access the site freely. And then ultimately our permanent bridge will not have any in-stream impacts, so we'll be able to avoid the recurrence of that impact in future years as the project construction phase develops. And so that's sort of all illustrated in this at a glance schedule here for construction. Obviously, given where we're at in the project, this is extremely preliminary, but the takeaway here is that if we keep up the pace, our deliberate pace on design and procurement efforts, and really nail that date for September and October board approval, and are able to get our contractor on site at the beginning of the fourth quarter, we're in pretty good shape to avoid the delays that would be imposed by these time of year restrictions, which will then not be an issue anymore after that work is complete for clearing and site access. You know, the restrictions will still be in place, but we will have avoided all impacts by our account. I might pause here for a second and ask if there are any questions on this. All right, hearing no questions, we get into a little bit of our update on procurement status. So all of the items that are checked have represent activities that have been completed. Like I mentioned earlier, bids are due on July 7th. That will follow a best value selection of the offered bids, leading up to a September CIP committee presentation and recommendation, and ultimately board approval if everything goes well. And it's also an opportunity to highlight on the right side of the slide here that we really have seen a lot of good interest from bidders on this project. At some point, there's something like 5 or 6 heavy geotechnical firms looking at the work, presumably to either bid or partner up on our tunneling efforts. And, you know, something upwards of like 50 or 60 representatives of different companies that showed up to our pre-bid site visit, which is where this picture was taken a few months ago. With that, we'll get into our update on capital costs. So this is our financial summary, and towards the top of the slide, you see our figures, our current figures on actual spending for our pre-construction tasks executed by our 3 major consultants, Clark being the CMAR, Back and Beach, our professional advisor, and Arcadis our design engineer. We're showing that we've completed about 78% spending, 73% time complete, and that really represents us, sort of maintaining that steady pace towards completion of the design elements that are and delivery packages that are crucial to our bidding efforts to this point. Towards the bottom of the slide there, you have our projections on anticipated construction and CA services costs. And then at the very bottom of the slide, our $10 million FEMA pre-disaster mitigation grant, which is going to offset some of the costs for this project. I'll say a little bit more about the CA services and construction. So CA services is really an extremely preliminary figure or range at this point. We are mostly basing it on the anticipated level of effort for a project of this size and with the complexities that we know we will be encountering, heavy tunneling construction being sort of the key one there. And for our construction, we do carry a little bit more than or roughly double our usual contingency figure of 5% for most of our projects. And that's really due to sort of the same work features that sort of represent something far beyond what we are typically accustomed to doing. We're mining tunnels under the Goose Creek, and although we have performed extensive subsurface and geotechnical studies in the area, we really do still run the risk of encountering some surprises along the way that could really cause or result in the need for us to address major issues during construction. We hope it won't be the case, but right now that's what we're thinking on contingency for the project as a preliminary stab at this, really. I think I'll park it here again and ask if there are any questions from our committee. Very good. And with that, get a little bit into next steps here. Like I've mentioned before, contract price development is really the next big effort for us, concurrently to the development of the 100% design. We have planned presentation for the CIP meeting on September 27th. Hopefully, we'll receive board approval for our construction and CA services on October the 12th, which will allow us to proceed with an NTP around November, and then enable us to stay on track to avoid any time of year impacts to the project. Any questions?
Is there any, this is Marty, is there any work that has to be done on the quarry itself? I can't remember. Did we have a project that sealed it?
We had a project to perform scaling on some of the areas that were identified to be maybe a little bit more problematic or risky. That project, and Savita might be able to help me out here, might have preceded my time of Loudon Water, but maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Does that maybe sound right, Savita?
Probably about 3 or 4 years ago.
3 or 4 years ago. So it set up some retaining structures along the quarry wall, really in close proximity of the access road down to the quarry and the tunnel between A and B. Mr. Sultan, I did probably omit a few additional key features at the reservoir, including dewatering of the reservoir itself, which has accumulated water from seepage over time, as well as some the work to construct protection of the 3 portals where the tunnels daylight into the quarry. There's a little bit of work to be done there. The access ramp itself will be improved substantially. We have some articulated blocking that will go down and enable our ops and maintenance teams to launch boats in the water for maintenance purposes, water quality, sampling, that kind of task. And there's a few other site security around the quarry rim, establishing that fence line, security system, cameras. There's all sorts of work at the quarry site itself, at the reservoir site itself, which I omitted in the interest of maybe keeping up with that little video that we presented earlier.
Okay, thanks. I just couldn't remember if we had done something. Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I don't have a question, but I appreciate the update. It's a big project, and like keeping up with it. Thank you very much for the details.
Yeah, good presentation.
Thanks, sir. With that, I think I'll turn it back over if there's no more questions.
Thank you, Sam.
I guess
The next item is the capital spending report by Tom Lipinski.
Good morning. Just to mention that the spending is just about at 90% of the projection, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
I see you're standing a lot closer to the line this year than past years.
Yeah, it feels that way.
Yeah, we have a lot of work going on, so
We
that's
do.
great.
Yep.
It's true. We have an awful lot of work going on, but everything seems to be proceeding pretty good. I guess the staff might have something to do with it.
I'm sure staff has a lot to do with it, but the other thing is supply chain and other delays don't seem to be entering in as much. But let's knock on wood and hope it doesn't come back to us.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Okay,
Jewel,
thank you.
You want to call the next thing, Jewel? Because again, I don't have the agenda on my screen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The next item is the tentative agenda, which everyone can view in board docs. And then the next meeting will be August 23rd. And with that, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to call to adjourn the meeting.
Again, Jim, you'll take care of the report at the board meeting?
I will take care of the report at the board meeting.
I thank you. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
I make the motion that we adjourn. This is Jim.
I second it. This is Marty. Can we have a vote?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Bonfils?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Ursakar?
Yes.
And Mr. Sultan?
Thank you, sir, Ms. Ursakar, for coming in from wherever it was, California.
I
vote yes.
I woke up at 3 a.m. in the morning and then 5 a.m. Like I can't miss the meeting.
Oh,
But
boy.
yeah, but thank you. I'm gonna go to bed now. All right, take care, everyone. See ya.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Have a great
Okay.
day.
Thank you, Jewel.
You're welcome. Thank you for your patience.